Hi, everyone. I want to be talking about what you need to do for your revision plan assignment. So, um, after you've completed your rough draft and after I have marked your rough draft, you need to complete a revision plan. Just to let you know, just to be transparent about what I'm doing, one of the reasons I give you a revision plan is I want to make sure that you go back and look at the comments that I made on your rough draft. Um, I can see when students are looking at assignments, whether you look at my comments on your rough draft. And I know from experience that a lot of students will not look at the comments that I put on the rough draft and then go ahead and do the final draft without doing that. And I'm like, you can't do that. So this is worth a certain number of points, right? So there's a point value associated with you going through, looking at the comments that I put on your rough draft, and thinking about that so that you can think about what to do for your final draft. The revision plan assignment, this is in the folder, in the Part 1 folder. It says in here for the revision plan, you need to do the following things. Copy exactly what I wrote in either the click here to see my comments or click here for summary of things to do button in your rough draft. So there's a section in your rough draft that either says click here to see my comments or click here for summary of things to do, one or the other. Click on that and it will have some specific comments. All you need to do is you can copy and paste into the document exactly what I wrote there. Okay, the first part's fairly easy. Just do that. The second part, to look, I need you to look throughout the document for any other comments I make in your rough draft. You don't need to copy those, but you look through them, and then in your own words, explain what you interpret all of those comments to mean. So don't just tell me what you interpret the comments up at the top. Click here to see my comments, or click here for summary things to do. I want you to explain what all of the comments mean. And so that might take a little while because there might be a number of different things going on. And I want you to, in your own words, kind of explain it. I want to make sure that you are processing the information that I gave you. So look at those comments and explain what they mean. What is it? What seems to be the main problem or problems that you're having with your rough draft that I seem to be talking about? So in your own words, explain that. Then in 3, explain exactly how you're going to go about correcting that. Now, some of that is potentially self-explanatory. He said that I needed to have a better thesis, so I'm going to revise my thesis, right? But go ahead and put that down there if that's what you have there. But you also might want to talk about things like, are you going to have a phone appointment with me? I might have said you need a phone appointment, so you should say in this part, if I said we should have a phone appointment, you should definitely say that we should have a phone appointment. And I'll be expecting you to follow up with that by emailing me to set up a phone appointment. Will you go to the Writing Center? I might have said to go to the Writing Center, and so that's something you want to do. Will you review the sample materials again? In just a moment in this video, I'm going to be talking some about some issues that some of us might be having on the rough draft. So you might want to look at those again to make sure you understand what I'm talking about. Anything else? Are you going to get some, have a friend read it over for you, or whatever it is that you might be doing to be able to prepare for this? I just want you to be thinking about this, because realize that there is, you've got something you need to do, and I want you to be thinking about exactly how you're going to get there. And then in 4, what questions do you have about your rough draft, right? Ask anything that you have. If you are not sure about what any of my comments mean, you're not sure about what to do next, whatever it is, if you have any question, go ahead and write it there in number 4. When I mark these, I will be looking at these and I will answer your questions. If the question is too long, I might say, this is a great question. This is a better question for a phone conference to set up a time to talk to me. So you want to come back to this and check those answers. So if you ask a question, come back later after it's marked, look, because I will be answering that. Okay, so that's all we need to do for the revision plan assignment. It's fairly simple, not a lot of hard work, but again, my goal with that is simply to make sure that you do go back and check to see what my comments were. Next thing, I want to look at a sample rough draft here and talk about some of the issues that some of you might have been having. So you see this is a sample student here. It is formatted correctly. You can even see, I guess, up above my head, their last name is student number 2, right? Their first name is sample, last name is student number 2. They even have their last name, student number 2, and the page number afterwards. So it's all formatted correctly, which everything should be. And if you're still working on your formatting, if you're having questions about that, then you can let me know. But let's just talk about what you're supposed to be doing here in developing this essay. And by developing, I mean to kind of take the idea and kind of explain it in some kind of detail, because that's one of the problems we sometimes have with an essay, is that we feel like, wait, how can I talk about this one idea for 3 pages? And it's a great question, but let's look at how we do that. Let's see what we're going to do. And one of it's going to have to do with the organizational structure. So let's look at what we have here. So this person's talking about Dothead. They say living in America is not always easy, especially if you're an immigrant or first generation American citizen. Right? And that first sentence, kind of a general statement that kind of leads us into kind of the ideas that we're dealing with in Dothead, right? Because this person is the author of Dothead is not having an easy time and is either an immigrant or first generation American citizen. Although America typo, is well known for helping individuals create a better lifestyle for themselves, that is not always the case. In the poem Dothead, it should be quoted. The person didn't quote, but that's all right. All kinds of little things like that we have. In the poem Dothead by Amit Majmudar, the poet uses metaphorical language to express how challenging it is for someone to physically represent their culture, all while standing tall and proud for what they believe in. And there's a pretty good thesis, because sometimes the thesis that I was getting was saying something like, it's difficult for recent immigrants to America, right? People often face prejudice. And those things are true. This goes a little bit farther, though, right? It's difficult to physically represent. It's a little vague there, but physically represent by potentially having that the bindi there. But the second part is really nice, all while standing proud for what they believe in, right? This idea that this poem isn't just about the prejudice that the poet faces, but it is also about how the poet responds. And so that's a fairly specific statement in there, because then that gives us some more to talk about as we go through. So this isn't just about physically representing the culture, the problems, how challenging it is to be an immigrant. It's about what we do, right? How we respond to that by standing tall and proud. And the poet uses metaphorical language to do that. So let's talk about some of the places where the poet is going to be using this metaphorical language. So it says, Amit, by the way, we should always use the poet's last name, right? Well, now that changed the formatting. We won't do it because it's changing the formatting, but whatever. Amit, it'll be now. We know it's supposed to be Majmudar. Why won't it allow me to do this? I don't know what this formatting is it has in here. All right, so Ami demonstrates this by using metaphorical language to express the bizarre thoughts people may have when talking about the third eye in Indian culture, right? So let's have an explanation of these bizarre thoughts. In line 3, it states, it's not some freak third eye that opens on your forehead like some Chernobyl baby, should be a comma there, meaning that people make assumptions about that the third eye is something straight out of a horror movie, right? And so this is a simile, right? They probably should have said simile, but it is. We'll say that it's in general, it's metaphorical language that shows that people think the third eye is out of a horror movie because they compare it to the Chernobyl baby. So that's what that simile is doing. As the poet uses Chernobyl as an example of a comparison, it's not as an example, but he uses the Chernobyl as a comparison, right? Uses Chernobyl as a comparison. He is demonstrating that people view the third eye as some birth defect that people have when coming in contact with the Chernobyl disaster that happened. However, this is not the case. The third eye did not come from the Chernobyl disaster, but is rather known in Indian culture for containing occult power and wisdom in the forehead from a deity, which is known as the god Shiva. Another way the poet. So it's saying that people may think negative things about uh, uh, um, about people from other cultures. And this simile of the Chernobyl baby is showing us that. Okay, and so this person is kind of developing, explaining that explaining that idea. They're explaining what that Chernobyl baby means, and it takes them a few sentences to do that. And that's the kind of thing that you need to make sure that you're doing, is taking a few sentences to really explain what's going on. Another way that the poet uses metaphorical language is to explain the comparison of what the third eye really is. Line 8 says it's how the X that says where the treasure's at is not the treasure, but as good as treasure, right? This shows the poet is comparing the famous saying X marks the spot to explain that the eye is metaphorically an X, which is a treasure. Sentence is a little complicated here, but they are saying that this, instead of being like some kind of birth defect, it's something valuable, right? One simile says other people might see the bindi as being some kind of strange thing. That's what kind of freak people have, or something like that. It's comparing it to a Chernobyl baby, and so it's being compared to a birth defect. That's something wrong, as opposed to being compared to a treasure, which is going to be something valuable, right? And so we said the poet is expressing that the third eye is not only seen as a treasure, but far more special than a treasure, right? And so this person has talked about those two similes there, right? About the treasure and the Chernobyl baby, and spent a paragraph kind of explaining that. Again, this document, this example is going to be in your folder. So you can look at that and think about how that works, right? And then we go on to do that. You can see down here they talk about my mouth, their laughter made my mouth go dry, comma, right? Because he is baffled when he says mouth go dry. His mouth does not necessarily go dry, not literally, but it's a metaphor explaining that he's shocked. Okay, and so just recognizing that that's how we develop the idea. We explain very specifically what the metaphor means. Imagine that you're writing to somebody who completely doesn't understand the poem. What is it that you would say to them? Look at the next one that we have. That is sample draft one. Another one. Women can feel a lot of pressure to fit a perfect image from a young age. One may feel the need to match society's standards, and then we just skip that and we say, in What It's Like to Be a Black Girl, for those of you who aren't, by Patricia Smith, she uses metaphorical language to show the struggle black girls go through to try and fit in to meet society standards. I think that's true. We might want to be a little bit more specific and say maybe specifically society's beauty standards. So we can add that in there. That allows me to add some stuff without changing the formatting. But then look what we have down here. Smith uses figurative language to speak on how young girls try to change their physical appearance to fit a social standard. In lines 4 and 5, she says it's dropping food coloring in your eyes to make them blue and suffering their burn in silence. Smith is comparing the usage of colored contacts to food coloring because both are used when you want to change the appearance of something. So see, this person is saying, wait, that food coloring isn't really food coloring, it's a metaphor for colored contacts. Okay, and we're like, oh, okay, now we're talking about metaphorical language. In many societies, the definition of beauty is long, straight, blonde hair and blue eyes. For many young black girls, this standard of beauty is damaging to self-confidence, and their hair and eye color is the opposite of that. Colored contacts can be irritating to the eyes, yet young black girls would still wear them just in hope of seeming more exotic and desirable to others. Okay, and see how that person's gone through and really explained this. And so now we understand what that whole thing about dropping food coloring in their eyes mean. And then additionally, Smith says it's popping a bleached white mop head over the kinks of your hair and primping in front of the mirrors that deny your reflection. Here Smith is comparing what a perm looks like on a girl's hair to a mop, right? Oh, so we're making a comparison between that hair and a mop. That's why we're going to be doing that, right? And so that's what we're looking here, is this kind of development to go through and actually explain this is what the metaphor is, this is what the comparison is, and here's how that comparison helps us understand the larger idea that we're trying to get to. Okay, so keep that in mind, because that's one of the things that many of you are missing. You're not really developing those ideas. You've got an idea about what the metaphor is, but you aren't really explaining it step by step. Again, imagine that you're writing this to somebody who does not understand how that metaphor is operating. What would you say to them to make sure that they understand that as clearly as possible? And that's the kind of thing that you want to put in there. So keep all that in mind as you're working from your rough draft to your final draft as you're going to be developing that, right? And again, you'll need to as well make sure that you're filling out the revision plan.